will make you do a double take. A quadruple amputee pro cornhole player accused of shooting and killing a friend who was riding with him in a car.
What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be showing you how I crank back my crossbow.
This is Dayton Weber. He's 27 years old and he's from Charles County, Maryland, which is an area south of Washington, D.C. As we're recording this, Dayton is being transferred back to his home state after he was arrested in Virginia. Authorities say he shot and killed a man who was riding in his SUV, then allegedly dumped his body on the side of the road before he took off.
Someone was shot, 2236.
Now look, it is shocking what deputies are alleging Weber did as he drove his car with 3 passengers inside. Not just the crime, but the alleged aftermath that led to a manhunt across state lines. But before we talk about the crime, we got to talk about Dayton Weber, who this person is and what made him such an inspirational story to so many people, at least before what deputies say happened on Saturday night. You're looking at a video here of Weber competing in a cornhole competition. He posted this to his TikTok. So Weber was a professional in the sport or activity that a lot of us do at tailgates and barbecues. He would play cornhole by propelling himself forward with a bag to throw it. He does not have arms and he does not have legs, but he was really good at cornhole. In fact, according to ESPN in 2020, Weber was named the best cornhole player in all of Maryland. That is of all players across the state, not just people with disabilities. Now, ESPN actually did a 6-minute feature on Dayton in 2023. And in that story, Dayton's family says when he was 10 months old, he got a bacterial infection that led to sepsis and it nearly killed him. But in an effort to save his life, they had to amputate his arms and his legs.
Like that second shot a little better, don't you?
Now, what made Dayton's life story so special is that Dayton went on to live his life like anyone would. In fact, he probably does more than a lot of people do. He's an avid outdoorsman. He often posted videos on social media showing him out hunting with bows and guns. And here he is with a gun strapped to his back, climbing up into a tree stand while he's out hunting. But cornhole is really where Dayton became a national story. He told ESPN that he would compete in dozens of tournaments a month. And then in 2023, he got a spot in the big time, the American Cornhole League. This is like the major leagues for people who throw bags. Dayton said his life motto was "The world won't wait." But now that award-winning smile, it's been replaced with what looks like a grin in his mugshot. And it is chilling when you think of what he is accused of, that would be the facial expression he would give the camera.
Someone was shot, 2236. I'm still waiting on a call, but it sounds like they're in a vehicle covered in blood, possibly going to CRMC, but I'm still trying to get further.
So let's break down what Dayton is accused of doing. He was driving in a car, his own SUV. He's driving. There were 3 people inside. They're going through Charles County, Maryland, and police were waved down around 10:30 on Saturday night by 2 people on the side of the road who said they were in that vehicle driven by Weber. Deputies say that Weber got into an argument with the person who was riding shotgun.
10-4 should be a white sedan, and male was shot in the head. Number 2 male, red shirt.
Extra 4, I'm about to pull up. You 10-3.
So deputies get waved down by these 2 people on the side of the road. And they have this incredible story, terrifying, of what Weber allegedly did inside the vehicle, shooting the person who was riding shotgun because of an argument. And the issue, though, at that point was they didn't have Weber, the deputies, and they didn't have the SUV, and they also didn't have a body. Now, roughly 2 hours later, there was a 911 call that came in from someone who said a body had been dumped in their front yard, which was just about a 10-minute drive away from where those 2 people waved deputies down. Now, that body was of a 27-year-old man who deputies have identified as Bradrick Michael Wells. He was dead.
Let me get your phone.
All right, before we get back to this case, I do have some big news to share because we finally launched our very own streaming app, Law and Crime Plus, and you are going to love it. Check this out.
Get on the ground right now! This is Law and Crime Plus. Ad-free, on-demand access to our hit series and exclusive access to our case files.
You can see his brain laying on the sidewalk.
911 calls.
That was my wife and child. Shot badly.
And the evidence they don't show you on TV. Join the community and track breaking stories. Stream now on Crime Plus.
All right, so trust me, we have a lot of cool stuff in the works that you definitely don't want to miss out on. Head over to lawandcrimeplus.com today. You can grab a limited time deal for just $3.99 a month or $40.99 a year. All right, let's get back to the story. Now, before we get back to how deputies tracked Weber down, we need to talk about this video, because in the wake of this story breaking, this video that Weber posted to his YouTube page has been getting a lot of attention. It shows Weber loading and firing a 9mm handgun despite not having hands. Now, on Saturday night, the witnesses who waved the deputies down claimed that they were able to get out of Weber's Tesla when he pulled over to the side of the road after allegedly shooting Wells. Weber allegedly asked the two passengers to help dump Wells' body. The two passengers say they refused. Then, after they got out of the car, Weber sped off and allegedly dumped that body down the street. Now, after that, Weber vanished.
Copy, Dayton, Weber. No direction of travel.
I look out local for that area. Just definitely believe this to be a shooting area. A suspect that shot the vehicle, which is close to the tree, is going to be a white Tesla. White Tesla. When you guys are responding to that area, keep a lookout.
Eventually, Weber was found more than 100 miles away in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's about a 2.5-hour drive from where all of this took place in Charles County, Maryland. Now, deputies say that Weber was arrested at a hospital in Virginia where he was being treated for a medical issue. And this is the mugshot that was taken by authorities in Virginia. Weber was arrested and charged as a fugitive from justice in Virginia. He is expected to be returned to Maryland, where he will be charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and other related charges, according to the Charles County Sheriff. Now, deputies say that Weber and the three people who were in his car, they all knew each other. It's unclear what Dayton's side to the story is, and of course, he is innocent until proven guilty. Now, this case, because of who Dayton Weber is, because of the disability that he has, it's raised a lot of questions about how all of this went down. How could it go down? We found this Facebook post. It's by a friend of Dayton's. And I think it's an important read because it does raise some of the questions that you may be having when you first saw this story come across your social media feed. That post says, quote, "So let's make some sense of this situation. And hear me out, people. How does a quad amputated person drive a car, pull a trigger, and drop off someone in a front yard with two others in the back seat of the car and have zero help? How long was he trying to gain access to this firearm before it was discharged? How long did the other individuals watch him get the gun and take aim? Why did the two witnesses in the back seat not stop this from happening? Even if they were stationary and this happened, it still takes time for someone who has no arms and no legs make all of this happen without someone stopping it. There is something to this story that does not add up. There are no excuses for the events that took place, and nor am I trying to defend anyone, but please help me make sense of the situation. I'm sorry for the loss of the family and friends, and not a single person deserves to lose their life over any situation. This post is not to start an argument or because I'm heartless, but please just help make this make sense." Joining us now to talk more about this case is Lisa Miller, retired detective, former chief investigator. Great to have you on Law and Crime. I think a lot of people with this story, first off, it's just a major double take on the headline, just trying to understand that part of it. But then I think trying to visualize how this is possible, to be honest, just like we know he's overcome a lot in his life.
Right.
You do still see, and we'll talk about the YouTube video of him firing a gun. You're still thinking like, how does this go down inside of this vehicle, allegedly, considering the disabilities that this man has?
Right. So I read the allegations and that wow headline that took us all, I think took the internet and social media by storm yesterday. Now, my mind went to adaptive devices, thinking, okay, well, I know there's adaptive devices for assisting people in driving vehicles. And then I started thinking about it and I'm like, well, I think there's actually adaptive devices for shooting a firearm. And then I saw some of the videos, and that kind of changed things then too.
Right. And you think about, and first let's just talk about him, because you look at there's the video of him climbing up a tree stand,
Right.
which is, he's got a rifle on his back, he's a hunter, which like, that's very impressive. And impressive is a tough word, I think, in this story too, based on what he's accused of. But then like the video, and I don't believe that law enforcement were clear on the type of gun that was used in this case, allegedly, but we see the video of him firing a 9mm. And I know we were talking before this, like just even being able to handle the kickback, which I think for people who don't handle firearms, you don't think about the kickback because movies typically don't show you like the kickback, but like that's a real thing. Even with a 9mm, like just what did you walk away with watching that video of him firing a gun?
I was rather amazed, to be honest with you. I mean, he uses what he has left of his arms, and he loads that magazine, and then he turns around and he picks up the firearm, points it downrange at what we're assuming, is the target he was looking at, and then firing that. No, a 9mm doesn't have the same amount of kickback as some of the other firearms, but for him to have the strength to hold on to that and keep that from kicking back and losing, his grip on it, and then to fire another round. Now, clearly, we don't see the target downrange, so we don't know what his grouping looks like and what he was shooting at. My guess is he would have to come off of that target a little bit. But then I'm seeing the video of him climbing up this deer stand, and the strength that he has is pretty amazing. What he has overcome in his life and the resilience. And I think, to me, that makes this case even more tragic. Someone with the grit, courage. I mean, to face every day from a young child on, that requires a level of courage that I don't think we talk about when you face days with a substantial disability like he has.
It's incredible. And it's like one of those things for me, like just looking through his social media, like he has this like award-winning smile. ESPN does a big feature on him. And then you see the mugshot, and he's kind of got a grin on his face, which, can be very subjective and kind of, what does that mean? I don't know how much you can actually apply that to the facts of the case going forward, but it was kind of just this chilling moment. If you're the detective tasked with putting this case together and you're trying to understand how a person who is driving has no arms and no legs, and or at least amputated major part of it. And then there's 3 people in the vehicle. A shot is fired. This person riding shotgun is dead. And then the person who's a quadruple amputee is also accused of dumping the body and driving away. Like, as a detective, where do you even begin in putting this case together?
I want to know what happened in that car. My understanding is the deceased was a front seat passenger. They picked up the 2 back seat passengers. That's what I've gathered from reporting from some of the local news. And I want to find out from those 2 backseat witnesses, what on earth, was there a fight going on? What was the demeanor of the 2 the accused and the deceased, when they got in the car, did things escalate? Murder often happens when we see, an escalation in that rage and anger. And was this some deep-seated problem between these two? Is this something that just arose that day? And then I want to ask a few questions, because I understand that this gentleman used devices sometimes. Was he wearing prosthetic legs? Had he used a wheelchair that day? Did he occasionally use, prosthetic arms? So what was going on there? What devices, if any, was he using? And then I want to know a few more details about where was the gun, where did he pull the gun from, and then those exact actions that happened, and what was said immediately after.
And that's the thing too, because as much as you look at the YouTube video and he knows how to fire a weapon, as a hunter, you look at his social media, he's a major Second Amendment advocate. So he knows how to handle guns, but then, it's different being like at a range or in that controlled environment to then being in a heated argument inside a vehicle, an SUV, and his ability to have this gun and then allegedly fire it at the person sitting next to him, and then everything else breaks out. How do you build that part of the case if you're the detective that's on it?
Well, it's going to be a little hard because you're going to ask tough questions, but that's part of the job. I know in our training, part of the law enforcement officer training was handgun retention. In these close quarter fights that we occasionally got in, if someone attacked us, we were very well trained on retaining that handgun. If the handgun's in the holster, how do we retain it? If we have pulled a handgun for a reason, how do we retain it if that fight comes close? So you want to ask the hard questions of, where did he have it? What exactly happened? Was it sudden? Were you shocked? What was your state of mind as this was occurring? And it could be something as simple as the two people in the back seat were just stunned and never thought their pal. And my understanding is, reporting has, that all four people in the vehicle knew one another. That's another layer of this tragedy. Maybe they just never dreamed that their buddy, this professional champion, would be capable of doing something like that. How many times do we hear, I never thought my neighbor was capable of, I never thought my friend was capable of? So I'm wanting to get into their mindset and just what were they thinking at that time? And it could be as simple as that. Maybe they were just in shock. I mean, look at it. They just saw their friend murder their other friend right in front of them. So there is going to be a level of shock there. But what were they thinking in the seconds leading up to those shots being fired?
Because I think about Weber too, and he ends up being arrested in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's about 2.5 hours away from where all this took place, more than 100 miles south. He's at the hospital for some reason that hasn't been disclosed as of yet, but he ran. We don't know what his side of the story is, but this is someone who didn't just go off down the street, didn't go to the police station. He went far. And when you come to building a case, you're trying to figure out, because you have the three people in the car, one of them's dead, two people who are accusing him of being the person who fired the gun. The fact that he ran, allegedly, what does that, how does that impact the way that you look at the characters involved in this story?
Oh, that goes to his mindset. That fleeing mindset goes to consciousness of guilt. So the prosecutor he's looking at this case already going, well, I have two eyewitnesses to this murder. How many times has that happened? Not that often. Two eyewitnesses that have already flagged down police and made their initial utterances. By all accounts, it sounds like they were a little freaked out, and at least they said no to this man. They didn't help remove the body. You have a headline that shocked us all, but now this prosecutor also has this video of him firing weapons, including a handgun. So the prosecutor, and you have the fleeing. So the prosecutor is thinking all good things. And really what my interest is right now is, what type of defense is this man going to mount, or his defense attorneys, whether paid for or appointed, will they mount for him? Because he's got quite a burden right now if reporting is accurate.
Right. And I think back to the social media part of this, because, that headline is like, what? And then you look at how strong he is, whether it's climbing up the stand, and he knows how to fire a gun. And then it kind of starts to make sense that he might be capable to pull over to the side of the road, pull a body out, and then drive away, might be capable of in that moment taking a gun. We don't know if that gun was something, right by his side, that it was already, loaded, whatever. And he's able to allegedly shoot this person. At the same time, though, like, how much experience does the typical detective have when it comes to, or I guess, how much could that impact? Like, you're rebuilding a case. Like, how much experience do you have when it comes to like a person with disabilities doing something like this, and how that could impact kind of the X's and O's of what played out? Or does that matter at all in all of this? And is that the disability part of it almost like kind of just the headline that grabs people's attention?
I think it's more of the headline. Obviously, you have to look at it, but if you think about it for a minute, you're in a vehicle, and my understanding is it was a Tesla SUV from some reporting. You have a deceased in the seat next to you. We already know that this young man has quite a bit of strength, so it doesn't take a whole lot of strength to lean over the console and push a deceased person out of the vehicle. You hops out, goes around, opens the door, pushes, grabs a hold of the arm and pulls. However, I don't think that part of the story is that complicated. The detectives will have to go. I don't think most detectives have a lot of experience with working with someone that is disabled to this point that this young man is, but it's murder and it's human behavior, and detectives know that. So once they get behind what exactly occurred in that car, was it some underlying issue that came up? Was it the jealousy? Was it whatever? Or just became enraged during a fight and he just lost his cool to the point that he pulled the trigger? And that is human behavior 101 when you're working murder.
Yeah, it certainly is. I also think about the two witnesses in this case, and from their side of it, it sounds terrifying, right? And they're either acquaintances, maybe friends. We don't know the specifics of the relationship, but how do you make sure that they're telling the truth about what happened? You have two people who say they witnessed this. They're the only witnesses to our understanding of what this happened. Doesn't look like, just from like a Google map search, that this was an area where you're going to have video cameras that might have been able to capture this. So it's going to be their word against his. Like, how do you make sure that they're the ones telling the truth?
Well, that's, again, these two people have witnessed something terrifying and awful, but it's the job of the detective to ask the hard questions. Now, I don't know if the accused in this matter, if he made any initial statements when he was picked up, but if he did, if those statements were against the interest of the two witnesses, clearly you're going to go back and talk to them and confront them with those differing statements. But you're going to bring them in and you're going to get a sense of what happened. And then you're going to start going out in that friend circle and talk to these different people, significant others, family members, other pals, and find out what the dynamic was of not just the deceased and the suspect, but all four people in this car. And it's even potential they may give them some type of truth verification test and see if they pass that. I don't know what that jurisdiction uses as anything along those lines, but that's a possibility here too, just to make sure and try to clear these guys.
Yeah, because it's just this story, and at the time we're recording this, Weber is going to be sent back to Maryland from Virginia, where he's going to face some very serious charges. I know every state is a little different when it comes to how someone is charged, but it looks like he is going to be charged with first-degree murder and second-degree murder. Mm-hmm. I know you're out in Colorado, but like typically, how can someone face those two in a case where they're accused of one person's murder?
Well, I think the first degree is my reading that I've done, and they're showing some, they're going to intend to prove some premeditation. Well, let's address that first. Premeditation, everybody thinks that you must sit back and make this elaborate plan, but premeditation, definitely here in Colorado, can be just a few seconds. Just that decision of reaching down wherever this individual kept his gun in that car. You know, that thought process of, I'm going to get my gun, I'm going to hold that gun, I'm going to put it on him, and if any threats were made. So that can go to the premeditation part. But the second degree can be a lesser included. That's how we do it here in Colorado. So premeditation isn't that terribly hard to prove in court, but say this crime arose from an argument that just escalated, just got more and more heated as they drove down the road. Well, that emotional aspect often goes with what we see in these second-degree murder charges. So if a jury, or if later the prosecutors, as the detectives are working and providing them more evidence, don't see enough for this first-degree premeditation and see more of an emotional outrage, they may want to look to dismiss the first-degree murder, stick with the second degree, and it also gives the jury some wiggle room depending on what case is presented later on in court if this goes to trial.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens next. Apparently, all of this stemming from some sort of alleged heated dispute inside the car, and wow, did it escalate, according to what deputies are saying. Lisa Miller, retired detective, former chief investigator. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.